So now we've got it set up so that you can walk up to the key and then press spacebar to collect it, and then that updates the quest. But it only works if you happen to have the correct quest like running. And so I guess there could be a problem if I review my design. It was going to be I was going to take this key and I was going to stick it back over here so that the and like put like a dead guard's body over there, and so like the idea was that you had to explore and find the key. The problem is if the player goes and explores and finds the key before they talk to James here and start the garage quest, it's not going to work right. So one way I could set that up to fix it is to only allow you to collect this key if you're on the garage quest. Now, my disclaimer here is I don't actually think this is necessarily a great idea from a design standpoint, because what could happen is the player could go over here, explore before they've talked to James. They'd see the dead guard and try to click on him and realize it does nothing. So then at that point they're writing off this. It's like, this is not interactive. I've already searched it. I don't need to again. Then they would go back here, talk to James, start that quest, and that's changing the rules of this. It's going to turn this on and make it interactive, but the player may not understand that, and then they could be searching like all over the rest of the place trying to figure out where this key could be, and it would frustrate them to find out that it's actually the spot they already checked. We just changed the rules. So I don't necessarily think that's great design. I think what's probably a better idea would be to make the quests account for the fact that you could have collected the key before you talked to James for the first time. However, I do want to show you how to set up that kind of context where we don't want this to be interactive until we're on a specific quest, because it's going to give us a case where we can set up like a quest listener that reacts to the state of quests. So one way I might try to do that makes sense would be to go onto my dialogue system trigger here that's controlling, when I use this usable, I'm going to change these quest states and turn off the key game object, and go to that and actually add a condition. So you could expand conditions and define a quest condition by changing that to 1, and then saying, well, we only want to do this when open the garage is active. And that might seem okay, but the problem is the usable is still going to show up. So if I click it, it's no longer like going away, but I don't want it to even show that I can interact with it yet. So I need a way to disable this component, this usable component, and then only turn that usable component on so I can just uncheck it to start it disabled, but I need something to turn it on when this quest gets turned on. And that's not what this is doing. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that quest condition by putting it back to 0. And I'm going to uncheck this. So now it's not going to be usable at all at the beginning of the game, but I need a way to turn it on when the open the garage quest turns on. And so in order to do that, I am going to go to my key here. And there's two ways I could set this up. I could make an empty game object and call it like quest listener. Maybe I'll do that. Or I could just add the same object onto my key. But I'll make this new object and call it quest listener, just to show you how to make an empty game object, I guess, if we haven't tried that yet. And I'm going to add, there's an object or a component called a quest state listener. That's part of Pixel Crusher's dialogue system. And this thing will listen to the state of a specific quest. And then the quest we care about is open the garage. And we want to know when the entry state changes. So actually that's not true. We don't care about the particular entry. We just want to know when this thing turns on at all. So I'm going to change the size of the quest state indicator level to 1. And the state that I care about is active. And then what I want to have happen when this state is entered, I can set up here. So I don't need any extra conditions, but you can see you could add extra conditions. I don't need any additional conditions. It's just as soon as this state becomes active on this quest, I want to do something. So I hit the plus button on interstate, and I could drag something in here. I could write custom code and execute whatever custom function I wanted, but we don't need to go that far. All we want to do is disable a specific component, the usable component that's on this key, right? Or I lied, we actually want to enable it. It's starting disabled wherever usable is. Let's see if I can find it. Let's collapse all this other junk. There it is, usable. So it's starting disabled. I want to enable it by checking it. So my quest listener here is going to find the usable component that's on that game object that we dragged in. It's on the key, so we find usable, and then we change it to bool enabled. And so if we want it to be disabled whenever this quest state happens, I could leave it unchecked. If I want it to become true, in other words, enabled, whenever the open the garage quest becomes active, I can check it. And you can use this to do different things, right? Like I could turn off any component on that object, or I could turn off the whole object itself based on the status of any quest or quest entry. And so I think this will work, and the way that we can test it quickly is by confirming that it's off right now. And then I'm going to go to my watches. So that's in the dialog window, watches, and let's set the open the garage quest to active. So now it's active. Let's walk into the trigger and see if it allows me to interact with it, and it did. And so now I can collect it. It might be just a word of warning that if you're already in the trigger area when you set it to active, so it's set the garage to active, it didn't like instantly update. I actually have to leave the trigger area and then walk back in. So just keep your eye out for that if it doesn't seem to be working for you. But if the player's playing naturally, they're going to obviously have to walk over here to turn it on the quest, which means they'll be out of this trigger region and it won't be a big deal. All right, so that's just more of an example of how you could use the quest state listener component to do various functionality based on when quests occur and as their states are updated. Like I said, I don't know if this is necessarily good design personally for this setup, but it's a good example to show you how to do this stuff. All right, that's the end of this one.